Jonathan,
Your
you-
new painting.
Yeah.
I really like it.
Thank you.
Whereabouts is the studio? Is Marylebone?
It is now in Holborn.
Melbourne?
Yeah. Welcome next time. I think I'm recording, am I? Hold on. Yeah, I'm now recording.
Just give it 2 more minutes.
How are you, Jonathan? Did you have a nice summer break?
Not so much a break.
And maybe not such a nice summer?
It's all right. It's steady, but I didn't get away.
There's still time.
Not the way things are going.
Oh. Have the RCA got you chained back by the leg?
No, it's all right. How about you?
Yeah, I was very fortunate to go wrestling crocodiles up in northern Queensland.
Wow.
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 Survived that. Amazing Daintree rainforest and Cape Tribulation. Amazing.
Are you renewed, energetic, and
Ready to go.
let it get up to 12? Let's just Lester's on the bus. So I've got a PowerPoint today on abstraction. There's also a text which is 3,000 word long text. I don't know if you read it or got it.
Yeah, we got it. You sent us that.
Yeah. What would you like to do? We can start with the PowerPoint, or we could go through the text. We do a reading of the text or do the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
PowerPoint.
PowerPoint.
Okay, so abstraction. What's your spontaneous or immediate understanding of the word abstraction? Or what is it, abstraction? I mean, it might vary a lot according to cultures and periods. But what is abstraction? Has anyone got a kind of opening gambit on abstraction? I'm sure we just if I got words. These are all words. So Sharon, for your rainforest escapade, I think you start reading.
Sure. Separation, emptiness, saturation, monochrome, formless, sparse, sublation, schema, beyond, value, measure, speculation.
So these words will become more apparent.
The Latin term abstrahe, how do I say that, Jonathan?
Abstratia.
abstratia, meant to draw away or to remove from concrete perceptible reality. Aristotle had viewed abstraction as a special form of attention, setting it apart from other processes of cognition.
So you could say it's a special form of attention, a setting apart, a removal from what is concrete. So concrete and abstract work in tandem, but it's a special form of attention, a setting apart.
Rather than a continuous commentary, this undertaking will be structured as a series of fragmentary encounters or episodes. Hidden dimensions.
There's a Bai disc, a jade disc, which is from the Neolithic period in China, from about 5,000 to 1,700 BC. And as far as I know, these are the earliest, most refined abstract configurations. They were not made as works of art. They're closer to sort of magical, ritual interventions in the relationship between the terrestrial and the celestial.
Bai discs are a mystery as to why they were produced and what was their symbolic function. It is assumed that they played a part of the cosmological passage of terrestrial being to the celestial exterior. The case of not knowing what something is serves to alert the mind of the almost infinite relationship that an object might generate.
The Tibetan Tanka painting, the mandala from the 14th century.
Tibetan mandala paintings are not viewed as much as art, but rather as a tool for achieving defined outcomes, such as enlightenment, healing, meditation guide, or serving as a cosmic diagram.
It is one of the late drawings by Leonardo of cataclysms and storms and the end of the world. He did these towards the end of his life. There's a series of 12 of these in the Royal Collection. They're small drawings, but they represent almost a kind of total image of the cosmic process of dissolution.
In the late drawings of Leonardo, he portrays various scenes of deluges or the end of the world scenarios. These in part were based upon studies of water that he had recorded in his notebooks.
They went from these micro studies of water to these deluges and cosmic depictions.
Dürer explores a novel sense related to the organization of pictorial space composed by images, symbols, words, and signs. On one level, it anticipates collage as a mode of pictorial construction, and on the other, of form towards excess. And we've got Dürer, Melancholia, 1514.
They're very much based on the understandings of alchemy, and we saw an engraving when we went to Cambridge. I think we saw this engraving of this print.
Dürer engraving was a complex visualization of the invisible fold within space, which could be apprehended by alchemical notions. In his work, Dürer combined exact observation with empirical deduction, but also mystical thought forms that introduced a plane of abstraction into all these other processes of making visible.
Kandinsky painting with green center from 1913, which is about the time when abstract configuration started to occur, very much under the influence of anyway.
Kandinsky, shall I go on?
Go on.
Kandinsky was influenced by the publication of thought forms, and with this notion of the etheric dimension. The idea of exploring this realm led directly to abstraction because it implied an extra dimension of space beyond the everyday empirical world. Besant and Leadbeater were closely influenced by the Indian esoteric tradition, especially the ideas related to chakras and the subtle body. The illustrations of thought forms gave reality to the sense that the realm of the invisible can be made manifest.
Because they imagined that you could actually visualize a thought form and give it pictorial form, and this influenced Kandinsky in his idea of almost his improvisations, which kind of interweave the etheric and the natural.
The found object. The found object is presented as if it could be art that we cannot readily accept that it is art. The object still looks like itself, an object that is visible. The fact that it also presents a condition called art cannot be seen, and yet on an abstract plane might be understood as being art, is a surprise. Without this quality of surprise, it is less likely that it can be understood as being art.
The Picasso synthetic Cubist period from 1913, but he uses real newspapers in this collage.
Synthetic cubism extended the existing possibility of the materiality of the work of art by collaging in real elements such as newspapers. This implied that the dimension of life could be incorporated into that of the imaginary dimension of art.
This is a fountain by Duchamp.
The advent of the found object was only a small step after the advent of synthetic cubism. As a step, it was predicated on an abstract language game which served to detach an object from one attachment, commodity fetishism, into another attachment, art. It then made another step from being a state of exception to being accepted as an ordinary, non-exceptional step. In this way, what was utterly actual could become exceptional, but this was dependent on the belief in the abstract language game. Otherwise, the symbolic structure no longer secures its potency, which is closer to magic than technique, as there is a mode of short-circuiting of rationality. These steps also indicate shifts, namely a shift in the relationship of art to language, but also in the way that art could have an ambiguous relationship between attachments, such as the law of the commodity, the measure of value, and the aura of magic, immeasurability. It is, in brackets or inverted commas, a joke about the meter, Duchamp glibly noted about this piece, but his premise for it reads like a theorem. If a straight horizontal thread 1 meter long falls from a height of 1 meter onto a horizontal plane, twisting as it pleases, it creates a new image of the unit of length. Duchamp dropped 3 of these threads onto 3 stretched canvases where they were then adhered in order to preserve the random curves they assumed upon landing. The canvases were cut along those curves, creating a template for new units of measure that retain the meter's length but undermine its rational basis.
Robert Rauschenberg, elemental sculpture from 53 to 59, just an old nail stuck in an old piece of wood.
When Rauschenberg knocked a used nail into a discarded block of wood, he added a third element to the construction, namely that it was potentially a work of art. There was no a priori knowledge that this would be the case, just a willingness to test the possibility that this dimension of this object might become so.
This is Leisure Clark, who's having a show in, I think, the middle of this month in just off Bond Street. Brazilian artist.
Leisure Clark produced a whole series of assemblages, mid-60s, made from discarded matchboxes. They are unassuming and playful, like a serial group of toys, but without instruction of how to use.
This is a still from the film La Jetée by Chris Marker. And she says the combat necklace he wore at the start of the war of the yet to come. So when an object can act as a cipher for that which is not present, which is virtual or is coming into the world or is about to come or will come. So it's the dimension of temporality is mysterious relationship to the objects. The sense of discovery of an object of a necklace.
A necklace can be seen, but the idea that it could be war at the beginning of a war is that is yet to come implies something that cannot be seen. It is therefore a paradox or an aporia, something that is there, that also cannot be there. This state is a surprise by virtue of the state of impossibility it presents.
One and Three Chairs by Joseph Kosuth. This wasn't shown until 1969, and it's always backdated in books as 1966 because he doesn't give permission for it to be illustrated without that date.
When Joseph Kosuth wrote Art After Philosophy, he lacerated painting as being a mere decorative appendage in the evolution of another coupling, namely the relationship between art and truth. Art as a knowable object, ? Art was viewed as an analytical form based on the figure of tautology, the circularity of the truth event. The authentic art of conceptualism simply dismissed formalist painting as being empty of all content, historically inauthentic. Within the conceptual gesture, there is the echo of Plato and the Platonic and Cartesian suspicion of the status of the sensible image and effect, but also the attraction towards a correlation between art and philosophy, becoming explicit rather than implicit. The truth effect of conceptualism is the ground for the idea that it is the authentic staging, not only for the least condition by which something is art, but also as the staging for the end of art.
This is Joseph Beuys, the Capri Battery.
When Joseph Beuys produced his work Capri Battery in 1985, it came with the instruction to change the battery every 1,000 hours because the battery can never run out, because it can never be switched on, which is an absurd logic, but contains a fascinating ethical dimension. The work operates as a thought form which defies the prevailing reality principle of energy consumption. It then serves to interrupt logical processes of understanding ecology. As a creation of an abstract surprise, not everything needs to be switched on to make things work. If it is a surprise, then is it one that is in part predicated upon the existence of structuralism and the notion of a signifying chain? This would then imply that a visual pun is not a purely visual intuition, but one that is also dependent on in shifts within a field of abstract thought forms. At the same time, this does not render the work in some way academic or analytical, because if this was the case, it would render the element of surprise to be void. The work might instead be a case of cutting through or into the relationship between matter and mind by presenting a non-binary condition with the sensation of getting it.
This is from a series of photographs by Shomi Tomatsu, a Japanese photographer.
Shomei Tomatsu created a document relating to the nuclear destruction of Nagasaki in the early 1960s. He elected to photograph traces of what was left over, signs of this devastation. So not so much found objects as objects left over, displaying the memory of the event.
Shall I have a new reader? That's great reading.
Sure.
Who can read? Who's next? Randy, you've got a great voice.
Hi, everyone. There's no talk. Looks like, oh yeah. Tracy Emin. My Bed, 1996 by Tracy Emin, collapses the difference between the object and the subject. We can no longer see the bed without imagining the subjective staging of it, and so this stands as a form of portraiture through the detour of the object. This object is an unmade object, just as the imaginary events performed within it are made up in a raw state. Nothing is left undone. Modernist abstraction, the play of form and formlessness. Abstraction points to several spatial determinations in the form of the elsewhere, the outside, the beyond, and the underneath. It acquires its characteristics or qualities from these, notably in the form of intensification, emptiness, density, discretion, immanence, otherness, thresholds, excess, and depth.
Monet's.
Can we just go back to that last slide and read it again? Because it's such an interesting, I know it's kind of a list, but...
Yeah, I'll go through it.
So I'll just start from, it acquires its characteristics or qualities from these, notably in the form of intensification, emptiness, density, discretion, immanence, otherness, thresholds, excess, and depth.
Made up that. I mean, that's my list. So they're the sort of qualities. So it says, abstraction is formulaic. It's a series of states and qualities of states.
I mean, I think in painting you can see that, Yeah.
I agree. And instead of a sort of emptying out, it's sort of an intensification of this sort of concentration, isn't it, of what it's the essence.
Yes.
You had separations, couldn't you?
Separations of...
I mean, it separates out something. It does something.
Yeah.
Becoming a part.
It's also about patterns in the sense that quite often in an abstract work of art, I look for patterns, maybe we could talk about that in the discussion.
They take you into somewhere elsewhere, don't they?
Yeah.
Or suggesting elsewhere.
Yeah. Suggesting languages, but you don't find them. Monet's painting of his garden at Giverny and Cézanne's studies of Mont Saint-Victoire served to open the door to the modernist process of abstraction. Both artists suffered from retinal damage, so it was as if repetition and partial blindness that formed a link between the lack of visual focus and the realization of a new pictorial mode of organization.
It's a late watercolor dancing with Saint-Victoire. More like a pulse. Tremble of nature.
Yeah.
And it's the interweaving of visibility and invisibility. There's nothing really solid there.
Marcel Duchamp, Nude Descending the Staircase, 1912. I wanted to create a static image of movement. Movement is an abstraction, a deduction articulated within painting, without knowing if a real person is or isn't descending an equally real staircase.
The study of a tree by Mondrian, an early painting by Mondrian.
Piet Mondrian painted the flowering apple 1913 to 1914 as part of a process of abstracting from a limited number of objects of perception. This could be understood as a process of refining nature to its underlying abstract reality.
Brancusi, the fish.
For this sculpture, The Fish, 1930, Constantine Brancusi explored the limits of pure form while still retaining a figural trace of a referent. His practice returned repeatedly to this process of abstraction of a limited number of motifs. The Cock, 1924. My painting is not fixed. I show things in flux. I respond to the Greek love of metamorphosis.
Guy Twombly. One of his blackboard drawings.
Oh, is that what it is?
Much loved by Sharon, I think. Yes?
Absolutely.
It is quite incredible. Well, does he fix them or anything, or are they? Could you just rub off the chalk?
Well, it fixed.
Right.
He did a whole series of blackboard drawings.
I love the working and the reworking. You can just see so many layers in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got both density and intensification, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And it's like a gestural economy.
Excuse me. When he says, I respond to the Greek love metamorphosis, what is that referencing exactly? Or how?
Well, it's just the idea of metamorphosis. Like you go to the museum and look at the sculptures in the Greek section. Then there's horses and there's animal and human. So it's
Sorry, Jonathan.
are joined together. So it's in the pagan world, nature and human and animal are very close together, and they mutate and form new unities.
Okay, so just that notion of flux and changing from one state to another.
Then later on you get in the Roman period Ovid and metamorphosis, the idea of metamorphosis, and particularly Titian's paintings after Ovid.
Thanks.
Philip Guston, Untitled, 1967. Philip Guston's drawing might be simply a right angle, or might be the edge of a table, but anyway, it appears to explore that space before naming occurs, what Kant called schematism.
The schema is a kind of form of emptiness when it's unnamed. It's as if nothing's there, and becomes something when it's named. It enters into the world through schematism.
Agnes Martin, Untitled, 1960. Beauty and happiness and life are all the same, and they are persuasive, unattached and abstract, and they are our only concern. They are immeasurable, completely lacking in substance. Agnes Martin.
It feels only an artist can come up with a statement like that.
Yeah, it's great. I like the way she says they are our only concern. Emily Krauss, Stochastic, 12, 2023. The paintings of Emily Krauss are termed stochastic, which is a random distribution that appears as predictable outcomes that suggest the union of opposites. It is predicated upon the principle of construction and in turn control to narrow the gap between repetition and difference. The apparatus which is assembled is like the meeting point between a printing machine and a studio space, the coding of which is not clearly demarked, so control and intuition enter free play within a restricted margin. All the proportions exhibited are those of the body that in turn opens out staging or even dramatization. This implies sense, not common sense or good sense, but a sense that interrupts the logic of before and after, the dualism of mind and bodies, all to release the primacy of the body of the idea into a realm of pure self-causing and mobility within an empty space, implying the erasure or prior signification. This amounts to a disavowal of representation, and with this a way of opening out the present. Abstraction as excess or lack. Abstraction in painting leads to a feeling of either too much of something or too little, thus a sense of either excess or lack. In either case, there is a process of intensification at a threshold. This heightens the idea that abstraction is a mode of passage or transformation of one state into yet another state.
It's painted by Matisse at Red Studio, 1911.
Henri Matisse painted the Red Studio in 1911, and in this painting he restaged the prevailing gestalt of figure and ground dynamics. We cannot imagine a room like this, but Matisse renders it as a visibility to be explored, as if an actuality. There is either pleasure to be gained from this, or a sense of shock. The room is coloured by this equal possibility of this difference. Barnett Newman, Vir Heroicus Sublimis, 1950-51. The sublime is a condition which is predicated upon being a formless object. The painting is at the threshold of visibility and so presents itself as a state of excess. It is full of red and yet empty of features other than two vertical zips. Can the painting be both empty and full at the same time? Does this give rise to a state of arrest, or is it a conflict in a state of unresolved becoming? To abstract from something in general is to isolate a quality, for instance the red of a cloth, so what is perceived is only the quality of the redness. In the context of painting, this process gives rise to the sensation of saturation, for instance the all-over red of a Barnett Newman or Mark Rothko painting. In these instances, there is a presentation of red removed from any other reference or indexical relation, so there is nothing left to reduce. Therefore, the red stands alone as its own mode of self-referral. The red might be read as a fore-image or after-image, a quality of displacement that assumes its own look and a gaze that issues from this look. For this reason, it has a quality akin to a trembling within the boundary of the place which is assumed. The red is both there, a presence, but we are also moved by it to the elsewhere of a place, a sublation in which all three possibilities are exercised, rising up, suspending, preserving. This sensation is referred to as the offering of the sublime experience, an experience of colour that is also the capacity of transportation into another realm. Red becomes a pure image, a schema through which being is actualised without iconographic resemblance. Both Rothko and Newman were both part of the abstract expressionist circle in New York, but also distinguished by another title, abstract sublime. It is a contradictory term because the sublime is a condition that is abstract because of and in itself. Mountains cannot be sublime. It is only the perceiving subject in relationship to the formless object that can give rise to the sublime emotion. The only and one way to say what abstract art or art as art is to say what it is not. Ad Reinhardt.
That's an all monochrome painting. There's different layers of red underneath, which make shapes, geometrical shapes. Many did all black paintings.
Ad Reinhardt developed the most severe case of a painting practice of mainly all-black works. With this, he invested in the idea that he was producing the last condition of painting because there would be no way of exceeding these works, because all possible content had been eliminated. Lucia Fontana, Concerto Spaziale at EZ, 1960. Joseph Albers, Homage to the Square, I.Sa, 1968. Beyond Representation.
This Gandhara period, this is about 1st century AD. It's Buddha's empty footprint. So Buddha was not represented in human form to begin with for 5 centuries. Empty form, empty throne, empty footprint, Bodhi tree.
The history of Buddhism is interesting regarding the question of abstraction. For approximately 500 years, there was no direct human image of the Buddha. Instead, an empty footprint, an empty throne, the Bodhi tree, all indicated the Buddha in conjunction with the teaching, but then the Buddha image appeared due to the exposure to the Greek notion of representation, founded on the principle of presence, and this served as a vehicle to spread the message of Buddhism, particularly along the Silk Road. The actual image of the Buddha was an abstraction that related to the laws contained within the teaching, but it gave Buddhism a face and thus an image. When Buddhism reached China, it fused with the native Taoism, becoming known as Chan, and with it the idea of a direct transmission of the scriptural principles. Paintings of landscapes were employed to communicate the essence of this message. In effect, these changes altered the direction of Buddhism, and this was in part due to the changing perception of abstraction. The empty throne of the Buddha as a presentation of the reality of the Buddha who is beyond representation. Abstraction in art offers the possibility of seeing through, editing out, refining, elevating, restaging, unsettling, disrupting, all as part of the process of reinventing rules within new visual codes. The rhetoric of abstraction in art has invariably been in alignment with the process of setting free from the formal principles of pictorial or grammatical organization that have assumed habitual form. This couples abstraction with the working of intuition, of opening out of an oscillating play of form and forces. Yuan Dish, Northern Song.
It's about 1,000 years old. Almost 1,000 years old.
Wow. It's incredible.
So it is the most sophisticated mark making that we see in visual arts until the 20th century, and even that it exceeds that as well.
Chinese porcelain opened out an extraordinary range of experiment in the art of glazing. The combination of colour and mark making saw a level of refinement that was unparalleled in the rest of the world for centuries. It was the outcome of systematic experimentation and the cultivation of taste that pushed this art form to the limit. Yu Yan, Mountain Village in Clearing Mist, 13th century.
And Sun Song.
Chinese classical landscape painting of the Southern Song period is closely related to Chan philosophical precepts. Many of the artists were also monks. Painting in this context was connected to the idea of a silent transmission of the scriptures.
Japanese Zen art, Kyoto.
Does anyone else want to read?
The next person.
Well, I'm off the bus, so I'm happy to give it a go.
Great.
Okay, Japanese Zen gardens derive from the sparse depiction of nature in Chinese landscape art, and the idea that this mode of depiction is the play of mountains and water. Added to this, there is a performative principle of the raking of the gravel or sand to indicate the constancy within the ever-changing appearance.
The Chinese wine cup. It's so finely made that you can see see light through the porcelain and see shapes in the colourless shapes in the often dragons moving through the porcelain glaze.
A simple wine cup, but so perfect. Behind the graceful purity of this form is centuries of refinement.
The Zen Enso painting, which the forms started to be practiced within about the 15th century in Japan, but becomes synonymous with Zen Buddhism.
Enso ink paintings emblemize the Zen depiction of what can only be achieved through the transmission of a gesture. It captures the feeling of the awakened mind, as if the perception of pure emptiness can be realized within an instant.
The Jain sculpture of the 19th century, so the human form is absent, as a shadow, as a something which isn't there.
In this bronze sculpture, a Jain aesthetic figure is presented in its absence. This indicates that the essential reality of the human being is to be discovered with non-being, as opposed to presence. Thus, the principle of all things coming from absence and returning back to this reality is what is figured.
This is a photograph by Shomi Tomatsu.
Shomei Tomatsu tilted his camera in order to capture a cloud drifting above the sea. Nothing much appears to be happening, and yet this slight inflection suggests a subtle drama which is difficult to comprehend. In art, it is hard to say anything as good as saying nothing. Ludwig Wittgenstein. Abstraction, we are never free from abstraction.
Thank you, that was amazing.
So what do we draw from this? Let's begin.
So sorry, Jonathan, I couldn't make out all the words you just said. You're a little bit jumbled there with the connection.
Okay, I'm just saying, who's got something to say? Who's got a question or thought?
Well, I'll start just to get the conversation going. I think because I'm interested in expressing what's not there without being literal about it. So I think that was for me, it was very interesting presentation. So thank you very much. So it's one aspect of abstraction of that is presenting that something that without literally presenting it. And I think, using the negative, say in the Jain sculpture that you showed at the end, I think was an interesting, or in Buddha, the throne without Buddha being there was an interesting idea of a way to represent what could be the unpresentable.
Have you come across that Jain Buddha in your own research?
Not yet, but I think we've seen variations of the Jain sculpture in our various discussions. I think in the British Museum there might have been one or two. It rings a bell, but more as a positive rather than a negative.
Same period of Buddhism, maybe a little bit earlier. Sharon, you were about to say something.
I was just going to say, but for me, that that becomes a bit too graphic in a way. It's sort of showing the negative. We're just showing, just hinting at what the negative space is and what might be there. It seems very
19th century though. Let's give them a break.
I guess so. I mean, for me, the notion that it's more powerful is the idea that you're isolating this quality, that you're sort of being moved to the elsewhere. through this sort of non-representational, choosing, like we use those examples of choosing red and sort of offering this sublime experience through isolation of a component or an element, rather than showing what it's not. Does that make sense?
I feel it gives a possibility of letting people to imagine how the Buddhists are going to be look like, because there are also people think that the Buddha doesn't really look like what it is usually is in the statues.
Where the Buddha image is an abstraction. Imagined configuration of kind of pure forms. Elongated ears, meditative eyes, third eye point, fine lips.
And was that an abstraction really invented to be able to allow him to travel, allow the notion to travel? So you took that along the Silk Route to be able to pass religion from one.
It's a form of passage that is known. You can communicate something.
But I feel as if it communicates a more personal message. It's personalised. It's up to the audience or the viewer or the believer to have their own interpretation. So I feel as if with abstraction, it's sort of dismantling rigid structures of what would have been expected or in other people's eyes. So I feel it sort of almost creates a type of chain reaction, different reactions from different people.
But with the Buddhist depiction, no depiction have been more of an abstract notion, and then they sort of had to ground him in a way to come up against, I don't know, the competition of the other gods or Christianity or whatever, to actually be able to sort of push it out there and sell it.
It does take place at the time of the birth of Christ, almost in a century, the first Buddha images. It's also the exposure to Alexander the Great and the Greek artifacts which were taken along.
So again, rubbing up against the Greek gods.
Yeah. We get these curious fusions of Greek-like figures within Afghanistan and North India. They're both Greek and Buddhist at the same time. And there were Greek philosophers who went to India in that same period. But we also shouldn't forget the iconoclasm in Christianity in the 15th century. The elimination of big ornaments in churches, and whitewashing of churches, and the removal of stained glass windows. And conflict between Protestant and Catholic depictions of Christ, or there's always a tension within Christianity between the image and emptiness.
I feel for the positive status itself, it's already a kind of abstraction, because nobody really know how they look like, maybe. And once people have one symbolic image there, and it becomes like a very realistic thing, and then everyone think it's a realistic thing. Even for the footprint, it is still very realistic in some extents. And I feel the abstraction is like always follow with some kind of realistic elements, even those only color patches, they are still kind of can remind people of some realistic things like the space and the materials.
Yeah, we with virtual reality, we have a different notion of abstraction. And we're subject to underlying algorithmic exposure to the world, which all things are presented to us as if they are our desire, pattern of our desire. So it's in advance of our desire that these things come to us through algorithm, as if we're abstractly known more than we know ourselves. So when we switch on the computer and select some material, other material is offered to us as if it's already anticipating our imagination or our desire or our thinking.
I think the algorithm is a dumbing down, and it's a funneling of information, and the more you kind of it's just a very dangerous kind of narrowing and a tightening and a constricting kind of funnel more than anything else.
I mean, in that sense, it's anti-modernist.
It's not I think we think it's an opening out, the algorithm, but I think actually it's a funneling down. It's a very dangerous funneling down, and a presenting and a representing of sort of I can't explain it, but a sort of it's a narrowing spiral.
Is it because it feels very linear, like one-way linear with a direction?
It's a marketing tool.
But it is.
And it's trying to guess what it is that you want to see next. So it's constantly trying to work out what your attention took last time and then where it should place your attention.
It doesn't guess. It
knows.
Calculates.
Mm.
It's persuasive. We think we're inhabiting our world through it because we don't even see it functioning. World comes to us.
The danger is that the world that comes to you is totally different to the world that comes to me, that comes to a football supporter or a Trump supporter or a whatever.
I'm a football supporter. How dare you?
And I'm a Trump supporter.
Good luck with that.
It feels like personalized advertisement, right?
Yes. Well, it is, isn't it? It sort of feels as if it's personal. That's why it's so clever.
But that might also like create the diversity. I feel why it is dangerous is because people only follow the things that they like and they disrespect of the other trends or other streams. But if like each diverse group is very respectful to each other, and that would be a very diverse world.
The problem is the algorithm doesn't encourage that. So the algorithm shows what it is that you think is the truth, and it continues to build your truth, and it continues to build my truth and everyone else's individual truths. And so then it becomes a very dangerous, polarizing space, I think, to think that even though we might be the most liberal thinkers that I think, but actually, this is what I'm being shown, and it's reinforcing my ideas every second, stronger and stronger and stronger.
So it eliminates abstraction.
It becomes like an echo chamber, almost like
Yeah, exactly.
literal echo chambers, and then we I feel like then we forget to be inclusive or be, like ready to hear any other kind of take on it. So perspectives, like as you said, funnel down.
If you had to make several episodes on abstraction, what episodes would you make? So I've given you my episodes, but what episodes would you? What episodes are missing?
I don't know if this is an episode, but something I was kind of interested in, which might relate to what we've just been talking about in terms of data, was that I thought it was very interesting. I think it was, I might misquote you slightly, Jonathan, but you either described abstraction as the measure of measure or the distance of distance. And then you kind of invoked Aristotle and the idea of abstraction being a form of attention. And I was also thinking that if we say take you meant is it Rauschenbach, the sort of what we might call as the very think of as the very sparse or abstracted form. I think you described it as art hovering on the edge of a block with a nail hammered into it, within the context of Duchamp's fountain and other such kind of found or almost created objects. And I thought that is an abstraction, but it also requires a huge context of data. We need to know that Rauschenbach is an artist. If someone had done it, a workman, just to keep a nail in a particular place on a job, it wouldn't have had the same level of informational content. It wouldn't have therefore been art. And similarly with the fountain, if it's not put in a particular place by particular people of whom the sort of spectators, the audience, know all of the information of how that kind of a whole ecosystem works, it doesn't function as art. So I was actually wondering whether sort of abstraction is not so much a kind of a cutting down or a winnowing down of information, but is just sort of where the attention is focused. We don't think about Rauschenbach's education, which art school he went to, which theorists he was reading. Our focus is attended upon that specific object, and we think that object is holding its own information. And then, in relation to, say, the image of Buddha's foot, I was kind of thinking, you sort of need to know what a human being looks like to be able to work out that that's an abstraction. So the information of what we might think of as the preceding objects, whether it's or the ones later on, rather, the images of the whole Buddha, was still incorporated and kind of encoded in that sort of image of the foot. We're just focusing on the foot. So it sort of made me think about abstraction, like, could the foot be an abstraction of the body and the body also an abstraction of the foot? And then to come back to your sort of the two things I sort of started with, could we then see abstraction as that sort of distance of distance, which can go either way, back, forward, through time, through complexity, through simplicity, and it's some kind of interaction between the distance and the attention. That's what I was thinking.
I think, Alex, coming back to your the early first half of what you're talking about, Rauschenberg with the nail, and I think Duchamp's fountain, and you didn't mention, but the Brillo boxes of Andy Warhol. I think that assumes that there's a frame of reference, outside of those objects. As you say, if you didn't have that frame of reference, a Brillo box is a Brillo box. So what makes it art? So I guess it's interesting in, you know, if you think about abstraction and art, does it always need that frame of reference outside of it to make sense of it, or can it exist, you know, in and of itself? And I would say, you know, maybe sometimes it can. So if you, and again, I know this is, you know, maybe mentioned this before, but, you know, if you take a Richard Serra sculpture that, you know, these big ones, these torqued ellipses and things, you walk around one of those, and you can viscerally feel that sculpture. So, you know, you don't necessarily need a social construct to understand that, whereas you would need that social construct to look at a urinal placed on a pedestal to think of that as a work of art.
You might, I mean, I don't, maybe we feel it in different ways, but you might, if you're walking around the Serra sculpture, need to have some frame of what public art is or what an art space is.
Yeah, quite possibly, yeah.
But maybe not.
I feel this actually fit with what Wittgenstein's words about, like, the meaning is like you understand the art without a word, and but actually for every, like, not for people who understand already, they might need a gate from the words to maybe to tell them and let them understand.
I think the way of looking at this is to say that when we look at a Greek sculpture, we're looking at ideal forms. We need to know something about ideal proportion. It's not human, realistic form. When we look at a Roman portrait bust, it gives us a closer relationship to the real. It's not ideal, it's sort of taken from life. So we need to know the abstractions which inform particular appearances, and it's true of all art. It's not just true of a found object.
Do we need to know that form though, or is it the viewer's response to Lester's point? Is it that sensation that you get when you're walking around the Serra sculpture, that sort of, there's something that happens to you, that trembling, that pulse, that sort of invisibility that you don't need to know what it's based on, you just have this reaction to it?
I feel the reaction is the most spontaneously thing that you already have. Some people just don't get the attention to it, like forget about the sensation, and that's why they need some context from words, from text. But for the feeling of a thing, it's always there.
I think you need words and text when it's not very powerful work to try and explain it and give it some sort of credibility. But I think sometimes when you walk in, it's just something takes your breath away, and it's like, oh, it doesn't matter what I read on the wall about that. Actually, there's just something that happens to me in a visceral way. That's just, I respond to it. And it could be the most beautiful sculpture that is kind of based on human form, but it's not. There's just something vibrating energetically with me that I move to tears by, or I don't know. I think art can be that. It doesn't, and that's when it's that pure abstraction of that sort of, that essence of that quality coming through.
And maybe it's not about the work itself, but more about the audience attention, like their own background and what they think is the most important thing to them. But both, maybe.
I think probably in some way, the charm of like abstract painting is like, or maybe it's charm of art. It sees the difference, or sees like the difference of educational background, or do you have any like art history knowledge? You can just get a feeling without other people explaining the work to you or without seeing the text. Because last time I talked with a friend, she is totally have no idea about any art knowledge, and we talk about the works of Cy Twombly in Tate Modern. And I think we share the similar feelings, although we totally have different like educational background. So I think for me that's the most fascinating thing.
Now to the question about which episodes are missing if I have a chance to make it episodes on abstraction.
Yeah.
For me, I would like to talk about the abstract in the internet today. For example, in Chinese internet, especially for Zenji, we're using abstract like a new trendy internet word to describing some people are pulling a stunt on internet, like trying to messy around and to have a trick with people. And to be honest, I think nowadays for a lot of live streaming are turning really similar like the abstract performance that people did in the last century. For example, there's some live streaming I have been noticed. They will see the mission from the comment from the viewer. They would like to do anything the comment require them to do to get more attention, and which also linked to me like Alex just mentioned the Aristotle saying the abstract is the form, abstraction being a form of attention. And I think this quote from Aristotle also working for nowadays internet, like people are trying to be abstract online to get more attention. Like the example that I'm using, they can do anything from the comment require them to do, just exactly like the performance the Abramovich did in the last century, but in a different way, and everybody can join to this huge game to gain the attention from internet, and we call them as abstraction people. So I think that's the episode I want to add, like a more abstraction episode.
Abstract body movements.
They have come to challenge like how many days that I can keep waking up and they just staring on the computer, open a live streaming and do not sleep for like 10 days, something like that. It's really similar to some portraits abstract performance that people used to do before, but now they have camera and people can record it to be the witness together to see this kind of social experiment together.
Do they use the English word abstract or do they use a Chinese word?
It's directly the same abstract. The Chinese translation is just saying you are very abstract. We were saying something like this. You are such abstract person. If you do some funny things, it's a kind of Gen Z description. Like RCA is in such abstract school, something like that.
Royal College of Abstraction.
Yeah, we have that means.
Yeah, we do.
Just on that note of other things that you might wish to consider, Jonathan, I was thinking about photography. And then, go back to early photographers like Man Ray or Edward Weston experimenting with light and refraction and reflections. And then, people like Richter, measure, like this idea of measure with time. A lot of artists using time as a kind of way of extending or changing exposures to form abstract sort of images. Yeah, so I think that would be something to think about.
I will also maybe add Rene Magritte and Paul Klee.
Why the two?
From Rene, it's more like Rene and also Dali. Maybe they are very like surrealism, but they are kind of like abstract from realistic. Like each element is very realistic, but the whole image combined together is like a collage and becomes so abstract. And for Paul Klee, it's more like from the image itself becomes something like, I wouldn't say cartoon like, but it kind of like more relates to the feelings and becomes just like it has a part that is imaginary and a part is very abstractive and also expressive. And the reason for that is also I like them.
Abstract is what you like.
We share a similar abstractionism.
So did you hear that thing I said about photography? I don't know if I put my sound on.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the mechanism in early modernist photography? You've got what's the experiment?
Well, with things like exposure, and movement, I'd say, and then looking at light. Well, Man Ray did his stuff in the darkroom, playing around in the darkroom as well to expose the paper in certain ways to create effects. It's almost like painting with photography.
There's a couple of amazing photography people too working in the darkroom, but with color in the processing, part of the processing. And this was it the 60s, 70s, and these extraordinary, you can't make them anymore because the chemicals and just the process is just not available anymore, but sort of processing huge, big, abstract images that are just so stunning. I can look up the reference, but
yeah, it was that I can't think of it.
Really powerful work. American. It might have even been later. It might have even been 80s stuff. But fabulous sort of colorist work, and all about the film processing, and the chemicals.
Yeah. And there's Sugimoto, is long exposures. Which, I mean, you've showed those before, Jonathan, in some of your presentations. Looking at the horizon and sort of abstracting, the sea and the sky, and then this kind of idea that the two aren't separate, although we construct them as separate in our mind's eye. When we look at them, we think they're separate, but actually they're not. And he's constructed these long exposures to reveal that. It's quite interesting. But yeah, like you say, Sharon, quite a lot of stuff in the darkroom, a lot playing around in the darkroom.
There's a German artist, I forgot his name, who does those.
Richter? No.
Younger.
Wolfgang Tillmans.
Tillmans. Yeah.
Yes.
I feel for the visual arts, there's also similarity in the architecture stream, like from realistic or maybe ornamental kind of style to very minimal architecture, and later to be like postmodernism, like curvatures and something that can be done from the computer because of the influence of technology.
I mean, in every instance, you've got an apparatus and you've got a thought form and you've got a materialization process. There's only so much you can do with those. I mean, they suggest an infinity, but at the same time, very limited. What is the experiment for us now? What would be the relation between the apparatus, the materialized effects, and the abstract processes which go into that relationship? I mean, we get exhausted with things. We get exhausted with a found object. We get exhausted with abstract painting. We get exhausted with puns and playfulness and performance. What new behavior do we need to inhabit? Or is it to say that new behavior is only possible with the invention of new abstractions? You're putting the question mark deep enough down. To quote Wittgenstein. How do we put the question mark deep enough down now?
I mean, we've touched on it, but I think there's a whole sort of thing to explore with AI and the notion of humanness and this idea of a splitting between what are the essential qualities of being a human and what are the essential qualities of AI. Intelligence and processes and matrices of information. Yeah, I don't know how much more I can go, to say, but I think we're at a kind of crossroads of giving away a lot in our thinking and our processing, and we seem quite happily doing it because things are faster and more easier, and they seem more beneficial, and they seem more like they're opening things up. But we have to then start to question, well, then what is it that we want to claim as human beings?
Yeah. Yeah.
Very love the sentence of the play of form and formlessness. And this summer, I have attended a workshop of the performance, and the tutor leave us topic is go to the extreme. And it has already really developed my thoughts on abstract art. I found most of the abstract art were the revolution of abstract art went to the extreme. Like the Roscoe's color. When I looked at the Roscoe's painting, I feel that the color that came out from God. So I just feel want to tearing. That's really extreme.
The threshold state.
Thank you.
In my thesis, I spend quite a bit of time, as you know, Jonathan, thinking about something called I refer to as the flight to abstraction, and I think about in the early 20th century a desire, amid all of the uncertainty of those years and personal uncertainty of some of the people involved, a desire to find the sort of fundamental logical root of mathematics, for example, by Russell and Whitehead, or Descartes' idea, after he'd been in war, after he was an orphan, he grew up in an orphanage, and was then in war, and his only child very sadly died at the age of 5, a terribly tragic life, seemed to be searching for some kind of concrete, fundamental, pure truth from which everything else could be abstracted. But of course, like within that search, the individual, or Wittgenstein later on, also incredibly traumatic, tragic family, personal history, World War I. Within that search to kind of retreat back to some pure fundamental form from which all other knowledge is abstracted, these highly sort of scholastic individuals that I've just talked about, Descartes, Russell, Wittgenstein, were sort of fleeing into realms of total abstraction from the reality of their life of family death and combating upheaval and imprisonment and things like that. So there's something I find kind of quite interesting about the role of trauma in people's lives in that it sort of almost like pushes people into abstract states to escape the challenge of their reality. But it's an abstract state within which they're trying to find some kind of purity from which a new world potentially can be kind of created. Maybe. And so to kind of come to your kind of question about where I sort of bravely and arrogantly step in, where art should go in terms of kind of abstraction or kind of creativity, and also to kind of follow on from Sharon's point about the sort of dangers of, if we think about it that way, or the threat or the surveillance or the kind of reduciveness of AI and the algorithms to which we move. And also like what we were talking about earlier in terms of the market and the market's role in sort of determining new kind of forms of abstraction so that new things can be sold and distributed. And I wonder whether the pure kind of abstract form that we should kind of be thinking about is art that just doesn't engage with museums, galleries. I know this probably isn't very popular for kind of working artists, but kind of art which maybe this kind of touches on discussions we had last kind of term about drawing and the kind of attractiveness of sketching. Art that kind of is kind of exchanged within networks which are abstract from the market, the institution, the gallery, and are exchanged within a sort of pure form of interpersonal connection, rather than the society of the spectacle, from which we should try to abstract ourselves. That's one idea.
I'll endorse that.
I like that one. That's a good one.
I'm just thinking about, what you just said about trying to abstract ourselves from the institutions of art, implying therefore that those institutions, in a sense, they're kind of abstractions as well, but they abstract into the marketplace, I suppose. Where would you, if art is not, are you implying that art should be seen in alternative spaces that are only available to a few people?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, maybe this group of people. I mean, I suppose I see kind of where that kind of goes in terms of kind of concerns about sort of elitism, for example, and accessibility to kind of the wonder of creativity. And I suppose I'm sort of, in terms of my own kind of whatever interests or kind of interest isn't probably the right word, but I mean, I sometimes in things I write use kind of codes, or, I quite like the idea that kind of art is just exchanged between people one knows. And I like sort of traditions, for example, in the Soviet Union of samizdat, of kind of passing poems or novels which would be banned by the sort of KGB or whatever it might be. So there was these kind of underground communities who were sort of sharing banned works like, I don't know, the Gulag Archipelago, or, Bulgakov's Master and Margarita, whatever it might be. And so I find something kind of attractive about that. But I kind of, if this is where you were kind of going, like, recognize that, can mean that actually the sort of the kind of institution, as it were, that we're trying to abstract ourselves, just abstracts from sort of the state to, a group of friends who went to art schools, so to speak. Yeah, I mean, I probably need to think that through more.
Yeah, it's complicated. And I guess there are many different art worlds as well anyway, within our current sort of system. And art, you can't divorce art from politics either, and political structures. Which is kind of what you're describing as well when you talk about, the Soviet state.
Or a new political structure. I take your point, you can't divorce it, but I mean, there's something kind of maybe more anarchic about non-institutionalized distribution.
Yeah, I'm all up for that. So.
But I think the state of the institution is gone that way, or is going that way. It's doing it to itself. So I think the question is really valid, Alex. I think the institutional, education is broken. We're all questioning the way in which governments behave or the media behaves. Who do we trust anymore? So I think there's a real disruption across so many of those institutional norms that once were there and played a role, and they've kind of, they've done themselves in really by making the choices that they have and not reacting to the world and the market in a way, or making the choices that they have, in recent years. So I think it's a really great thought to be thinking about abstracting the market or the place where our art lands, or the conversation that we're having sits.
And actually, in terms of like what you were saying about technology earlier, I mean, this group now, yeah, in one way we've sort of abstracted, but at another level we're on Zoom. So sort of the arcade within which we find ourselves just seems to be kind of, more virtual, more invisible. Maybe we should only meet up in person in sort of unlit, unsurveilled corners of London to have our meetings. I don't know. There's something kind of attractive also. Like I think earlier Jonathan was talking about the conflicts between sort of Catholics and Protestants, about those kind of, I don't know, those groups of people sort of sitting around a flame in a cellar somewhere, sort of discussing things because they're trying to sort of abstract themselves from the panopticonic gaze of whichever society they find it. I mean, we're on Zoom, so we're not quite there, but it's interesting to imagine.
It starts with a gesture of wanting to set apart. I mean, there's a space where there's something to be set apart, a discussion which can take place when it's set apart from, let's say, the mainstream institution of discourse, or something is to come. It's not arrived yet. We're waiting for arrival of something that we feel is possible, but we don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's that to come, which is a promise, a surprise. I mean, a lot of surprising things when you think of the relationship between value and measure. Started with the Greeks. And it was even occupied totally by Marx. Marx didn't overcome that relationship. So the theory of value was still predicated on that condensation of the relationship between measure and value. And it gives us a society whereby everything is measurable. It's an abstract law of economy where one thing can be exchanged for another thing, can be exchanged for another thing and yet another thing, and so forth, on to infinity. It's one abstract thought is dominating that.
So is that the danger that we're talking about with this online world, that everything becomes measurable? And then all you have to do is change the goalpost as to what the value, where the value lies. Who's in charge of of deciding that, for it then to become very potentially catastrophic. I don't know.
Elon Musk.
In terms of art, auction houses, they're a bit of a mafia as far as I understand it, and some, probably fairly not that many sort of powerful people are making decisions about who's being sold, who's buying what and for how much. I don't know if Elon Musk is part of that, but I doubt it. But I think don't underestimate the role of who the powerful people are that are buying art in terms of
what is art?
Sorry, I keep getting cut off. I can't think of the names of all the people. They're kind of but they have a massively powerful influence on the art world. I mean, well, who's who in the art world and who gets shown and who doesn't get shown in the larger institutions.
Well, a large part of the art world is the economic world. If you take investment programs, they always say, invest 10-20% in contemporary art.
Yeah.
So much in gold, so much in stocks and shares, so much in real estate, so much in...
And I don't believe they'd be the true arbiters of taste. I don't think they'd know exactly what they're doing. They're just being informed, right, as to how to where to place their money.
Where's another game? So you treat these different worlds as games which you play.
So if you go back to upsetting the institution, the root of the sort of the space, you upset the game, don't you?
Yes.
You upset the gallery, you upset the auction houses, you upset if you can somehow rupture that cyclical process, the game that they're all playing.
Yes, yeah. I mean, Damien Hirst did this thing where he sidestepped the 50% take of galleries and put his own work out in his own space for sale or something a little while ago. It was that thing he made, the Scully covered with diamonds or something. He wanted to make sure.
Disappeared.
Yeah, sorry, I keep on doing that and I don't know what's going on. But anyway, he wanted to cut out the middleman, as it were.
Where he takes 30, he gives 30%, doesn't give 50% if you sell it through commercial spaces.
Yeah.
He's really a good player, I think. Like play with these rules and makes money.
Yeah, but I wonder how it's going for him lately. I don't know. I mean, I know what some of us think of him, but I wonder what the art market really thinks of him still. I don't know.
Probably a bit passé, probably moved on to other people.
Yeah, that's what
I guess. I don't know. I mean, he's still making lots of stuff in his factory with his lots of workers.
And he is also maybe investing on new artists as well, because the Newport Gallery, have you ever visited? It was like his previous studio space, and now he built it as a gallery, and I think each time the artist that he chooses in his taste. Maybe if anyone wants, we can also take a visit there. I think it's curated well. And
didn't he give it to his son recently? I think his son is running it.
Oh, maybe. But it feels really like his taste. So maybe there's a little bit of advertisement there as well. No, not advertisement, like advisor there. Mm-hmm.
Can I throw in something here? I was in Sydney Contemporary Art Fair last week, and two things I wanted to share. One was studio gallery visit to Helen Eager, Australian abstract artist. She used lots of triangle shape with very happy colors. To 2011, she did what's called Tango wall installation in one of the museum gallery, and I used her as installation. So I was very looking forward to visit her place. She and her partner, Christopher Hodges, have their art studios upstairs, downstairs, and also run their own, buying a lot of or supporting indigenous artists, of course. So at the fair, they have a huge section with all those work, and I thought that was charming. At the same time, also the law of economy, as Jonathan mentioned, or the capitalism, the demands and supplies still plays part. And I think it's worldwide, the focus on indigenous art. Like I'm planning to go Venice in October. Again, Gold Lion thing is Australian and New Zealand, very indigenous artist thing. So that's one thing I want to share. And the other one was another collector's house that we visit. It was whole organized by tour leaders specialized in art tour. And there's a gay couple. One was a dance teacher, the other one was running a bookshop. But they have a very particular taste. They collect lots of queer art. One for their own amusement and two for sharing. Because they have no kids, etc., they actually have already will and trust or organized when one or two of them kick the bucket. Whole art collection will go to certain gallery and certain museum and certain trust, which again I thought very charming. And they pay artwork by installation over 5 years because they have a very minimum income. But these two cases I found really charming. And they were at the fair and they bought certain things and negotiated with the gallery or artist, and every month they deduct a small amount. And the 5 years, usually it takes 5 years terms. The one thing finished, another one finished. And so just wanted to share. The Sydney Art Fair was much smaller version of Basel. I felt maybe about quarter size, but also focused on very Australian, New Zealand, some Singapore, while Basel was so international. There was lots of abstract because it's contemporary art fair.
I think we've gone from art being an avant-garde pursuit, the modernist idea of the avant-garde, to art being representing within capitalist process the avant-garde of monetary economy, because it represents almost a new way of making capital, sort of the opportunity of insider trading. It's the most unregulated market there is in the world. It's unlimited plasticity. What are we going to do this coming term? I've got the PowerPoint on appropriation we could look at next week. But we also suggested that we could have actual meetings in spaces. Who's got a suggestion? Who's got an idea of meeting up?
Actually, my studio gets an open studio on this Thursday, but it's not only the events of my studio, because we have a large building and a lot of different artists inside. So this Thursday we have a exhibition, and all the artists will open the door, and probably we'll have a drink or barbecue party. on this Thursday, but probably they will have a lot of people. So if you, yeah, but it's a good chance to see other artists' work, not only like my work. So it depends on, do you want a more quiet place to talk about, or do you want to see like other artists' work?
Quiet space for talking, meeting up physically.
Okay.
What about, well, you know, you talked about that Brazilian artist, Lydia Clark?
Yeah.
Can't we see that show and meet up somewhere there, coffee shop afterwards or something?
We could do a meet. We could. I'm not sure. I think it was on the 18th.
Okay, well, we make it towards the 18th.
But we could do a date. We could do the West End.
Yeah, they usually work out quite good.
We'll wait till the show's open and do a walk around.
And also,
to Alex's point, we have to all pay cash or walk there. And we're, I don't know, balaclavas or something. Alex, what do you recommend? False noses?
Bartering, I think, would be better. Cash is not keen.
We should see how we can be untraceable from sort of leaving our door to arriving together. How can we make that?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I'm quite happy to film it.
Are you? Under the radar. Can we go under the radar?
Radar. I won't put it on the internet, promise.
What about
So we could do a West End walk around. So next week we'll arrange that. When we know the shows. I think Lydia Clark is one, which will be just on Cork Street.
Yeah.
There's a painting show at that 18th century townhouse gallery. Forgotten the name.
Is that behind Fortram and Masons? That one?
Ropeck Gallery.
Yeah.
I know that's coming up. But we'll arrange next week. We'll do appropriation next week, a PowerPoint.
What's happening with the show? With Malibin Studios or something?
so for the proposal, I'm still like forming it, but I've already hand in one proposal to Haifa Studio Houston, and hand in one for the fund application. So good luck for those two, and I'm going to form another proposal for the Haifa Studio in Mayfair, and also the ones in Boom Factory, Marylebone, because I've just visited there for taking some real pictures, and recently I personally have some deadlines, so it will be postponed a little bit more. And actually, I have a question. So, do we still consider the one in Holborn, because they are now open out opportunity for Holborn ones? And I asked the manager in Boom Factory. They said if we want to have both space, we can form two different proposals to fit the space. Do you think it would be a good try to form two of them?
A bit overwhelming to do two. We haven't done one yet.
But it I've already formed for Haifa Studio as well, so it would be like each of them would be a little bit different.
You go ahead and take the initiative.
Okay, then I would just do like everything, and
Yeah.
to see which we can fill in.
Yeah.
Okay, and then because we can change later, the thing is just to let them choose us first. And
Yes.
also, if anyone want to have like new works to be handed in, you can still like fill in the form.
That'd be great, because Karen and I discussed the drawing workshops, but I noticed when she put it in, she does put her name on it. So I'm happy to add like a little addendum to it.
Yeah, that would be great. And I think for now, we do need some more performance and workshop, because for now I think maybe only Chudamani has a performative workshop, and the others are like, I don't remember who had the workshop. Yeah.
But
By
we
the way,
need, should we have some deadlines, or are we going to keep it till we get something definite and then put a deadline?
For now, I will just tell you my deadline for the things. For another proposal I'm going to hand in to the Haifa Studio Mayfair, it would be on September the 15th. So if before that there are some things that you think of, you can still hand in. And just directly fill in the form, not to like and the filling, and then to tell me you fill it one more time, and I will take a look. And the first deadline is 15th of September, and the second for the Boom Factory Holborn and Marylebone, I will set it to the end of this month. And I will send both of the proposal to them in the end of this month.
Thank you so much.
thank you, Jia.
Yeah, no problem. Just do more work and let's be active.
Cool. The challenge is finding a place to meet up. But Rong, you've got an exhibition coming up at it's the Artist's Garden. It's called, isn't it?
Yes.
Is it Temple? Is it Temple Station?
October.
Because I remember I haven't been there, but there's a shed there, isn't there? Like a shed that they sometimes use.
What do you mean a shed? You mean a cabin?
Yeah, the cabin.
They did some residency for artists.
I'm wondering if I might approach them just to ask if there's a place or an opportunity to meet up. Maybe when your exhibition is on, we could meet up.
Definitely come October 2nd, and I can send I think they will send the invitation together, and there's a huge party for everyone, and there also have the people, a documentary team. They are to filming the opening and their performance, so it will be huge and fun. So.
But I know Claire's also said that often that space is available, so if we had an idea or a proposal, we could suggest something to her. So maybe I could ask Claire if there's a chance for us all to meet up, maybe around when your exhibition is on or another time. But it's also quite a good central place for us all to come together.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, one thing I could probably offer is I'm doing part-time architectural work these days, well, more than part-time, and that's near Farringdon Station, so I could probably use the space there, got a meeting room, after hours kind of thing.
Are you sure, Lester?
As long as it's after hours, yeah.
That would be great, because Farringdon's pretty central.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
And also, if anyone wants to have a visit to Newport Gallery, I live nearby there, so I can ask them if we can have a group meeting there. And they have a coffee shop. The coffee shop is decorated with Damien Hirst's artwork. And it is very quiet.
I'm going to buy one for Jonathan's birthday present.
Oh,
do you want to, Jonathan? I can contact them to see if we can have group meeting there.
Oh, I was offered one and I said no to Damien Hirst years ago. This is in the 90s. I said, "Do you want a Damien Hirst?" And I said, "No, I don't want one."
But
oh no!
Actually, for me, I think he has some part of work that is very good somehow, and I think it is a possibility.
But would you put it on your wall? Would you put it on your wall?
The medicines and the butterflies. So the whole coffee, it's not coffee shop. Actually, they sometimes give you free drink. And
they've got you
when you buy a shark.
But the whole coffee shop is the interior is filled with the pills.
Yes.
And some
Yeah.
hanging on are the butterflies.
Because he had a restaurant called Pharmacy in Notting Hill.
Really, he did. Okay.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
I once stole one of the plates from that restaurant and I've still got it.
I went to that restaurant as well when it first opened, but I didn't steal anything. Oh dear.
Maybe I
You
go
missed
to
out.
contact them. Does anyone want it or just no?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe when they have some shows that we can take a look. Last time I see some shows that has good work inside.
Yeah,
My
and
battery is going
another
low.
gallery is
Maybe
that we don't. Another
might get cut
gallery is Listen Gallery that we don't talk about too much. But on that road, on there's Bell Street. There's loads of galleries now.
Hey guys, so my battery is almost very low, but if I get cut off, just understand that it's because of that. I wanted to share a good news that I got in a residency. It's like, yeah.
Oh,
Thank you. So this is where I am at the moment. It's there inside. So this Arbeit Studios, it was an open call. So they've given me a container to work in.
Wow. Where is that?
congratulations.
It's in Hackney Wick.
Nice.
Oh,
I live
nice.
there.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's for 4 months, and they will give me 1 month. After that, they'll give me a show. It's like this place mostly, but the thing is that they have a small, not even a garden. It's like a small space, just like before the gate and between the studios. So which I was supposed to like make a proposal for, which got through. So it's an art commission. So yeah.
I'd also like to mention that I can host an evening up in the basement of Somerset House. I'm at Makerversity there. So it's even after the fire, it's now open till 9 o'clock at night. So we won't be staying that late, though, don't think. So that's a possibility to meet.
That'd be amazing. I'd love to see inside there.
Yeah, me too.
Sounds great.
Okay.
I am also happy to offer my space too. My studio is in King's Road, which is quite center. And I don't have Damien Hirst works, but there are a lot of Jonathan Myers work in my studio. Jonathan is painting a lot in my studio these days. So I think I can hold maybe perhaps 10, 12 people in my studio. And it's quite quiet. So another opportunity for gathering.
So we've got a lot of options for meeting.
Quite a bit of them.
How do we get in to see the royal collection, the drawings we're always talking about that are part of the Queen's collection?
You can arrange a visit. It's not, I think it is possible to get academic access.
Shall I look into that?
I mean, there's stupendous drawings in that collection. I mean, they've got a fantastic holding of Leonardo's and Holbein, and goes on, staggering.
And you don't need to wait for a certain time of the year for the gallery to be open. You just have to apply.
So I think they accept applications.
Okay, I'll look into that for everyone.
Okay, we've done enough today. It's exactly 8 o'clock, 1 minute past. Has anyone got any concluding remarks?
Well, just to say thank you for continuing to host this, Jonathan.
Yeah, thanks
Yes,
a lot.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks everyone.
It's really nice to see everyone back.
Same place, same time.
Feel back home.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, everyone.
Hi.
And we've got a
Bye.
new
Thank
member.
you, everyone.
We've got a new member, Rainey.
Yeah.
Amy, hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Okay, next week.
Thank you so much, Jonathan and
Bye,
Raja. Thank you so much
See you.
for the